This teacher Rabbi L.M. Dumizlo for Amity Hebrew Ethics. Africa must drastically change its politics. Otherwise, we are committing racial suicide, where a leader facing stiff competition incites xenophobia, tribalism, and violence to win votes. But how do we radically alter our politics? The masses must be educated and know power is with them. Of course, this takes too much time. Therefore, we need a dictator. Democracy has failed Africa. Do you know there are good and evil dictators? Let us explore this idea, which may not be very popular. Unfortunately, Africa has produced only evil dictators. We shall look at a few of them now. Then say Africa at this point in time needs a good dictator, not democracy. He was an evil dictator, Sani Abacha. Why? Because he stole from the national coffers, destroyed hope and faith and trust of millions and millions of Africans. You can read more about his life and what he did from this website. More African dictators. We suffer from village ideology, which fails. A big man versus a system, which has failed. System versus one leader, which has failed. Africa must change its politics yesterday. Otherwise, we are gone. This is Charles Taylor, destroyed Liberia. This is Somali Yadi Barre, destroyed Somalia completely, utterly, and when he left, had no succession system, and the country fell and is hijacked and is used as a fiefdom for all other wars that we see in East Africa. His Shaka Zulu started well, fought well, became a military genius, but abused this military genius by fighting and destroying all other tribes until now we are scattered all over Southern Africa. Although these borders are also evil, they were not put by us. We must remove them for us to develop. We need a dictator to do that. Corruption. There is no other good example than African dictators. Mobutu Sese Seko was a sellout. He killed Patrice Lumumba, destroyed the Congo, never developed anything, built useless buildings, spent and invested all our wealth in France, in Belgium, and overseas. Idi Amin Dada killed black people, lacked political ideology, was a tribalist, destroyed everything, was full of himself, full of his own ego. Hassings Kamuzu Banda, reputed to be highly educated, a medical doctor, very forceful, very strong will. He walked from Lilongwe to Cape Town to look for life, to look for education. But he ended up considering Malawi as his own personal property, never developed it, destroyed the opposition, destroyed those who differed with him. So he was an evil dictator, same everywhere. At this hour, Africa needs a good dictator, not a democracy. Let's give a model of a good dictator. Here is a good dictator. You are looking at him now. Very good dictator. That's the kind of dictator we need in Africa. Not the Chinese, but the mentality and the drive that this man had. Let's look at the countries that are run by good dictators today, because they rank as the top countries with highest gross domestic products and PPP. Qatar, Macau, and Luxembourg, Singapore. There we are. And the many United Arab Emirates. These countries are run by dictators, good dictators. That's all we need in Africa. Singapore has little land. Look at Africa. That's Africa there, including the Middle East, because there was no Middle East. And there is Singapore there. Small, tiny little dot. But Singapore, after its independence in 1965, the former British colony was transformed into a major manufacturing and financial center of the earth. You can read more there. Singapore, how Singapore became one of the richest places on earth. Why is Africa, how it has become the poorest place on earth? What about us? What is the problem? Something is utterly off here. Africa is thousands and thousands times rich and naturally endowed, more than Singapore. Singapore has a population of only about 5 million, and Africa nearly 1 billion, but 5 million are running and ruling billions. How could this be? Why? What can we do? The problem is tribalism. Tribalism and the borders that were put in place, and nepotism and favoritism, failure to communicate properly, civil wars. That is one problem. You can read more from this slide player. And also financial corruption. Africa blogging here, how we fight the 65 commercial transaction, IFF's international financial flows, all of them coming out. We lost almost $1 trillion. Offensive tax avoidance, tax evasion, transfer mispricing, dodging custom duties and domestic levies. This is done by government officials. When they travel overseas, they've got diplomatic passports. Corruption, hiding wealth in offshore havens, laundering, criminal procedures, drugging, open theft, embezzlement. This has destroyed Africa. It is happening across the whole of Africa. In Singapore, you steal, you are dead. In Singapore, you are corrupt, you are dead. That's how we should do it. Selling commodities, we have to do it official line, not tenderizing businesses. Therefore, although we have highly educated leaders in Africa, they lack analytical thinking and foresight. That's the problem. How did the Singapore dictatorship do it? Let's learn. He placed astute political and civil leadership first. Strong and far-sighted political leadership at the infancy of our independence is what made Singapore great, is what could have made us great, but we lacked that. Fierce anti-corruption stance. To this day, Singapore is ranked as one of the least corrupt countries on earth, whereas Africa is one of the greatest places where corruption rules. But this corruption in Africa was engineered outside. We were not corrupt in our history, but it was engineered from outside. Meritocracy, we do not give merit credit in Africa. I'll show you an engineer in one country in Africa who has been destroyed by the government because of his differing mentality. Financial prudence, we have already explained that. Pragmatism, we need it. No country can succeed without a pragmatic government, without practical choices being made, without allocation of resources done wisely, smartly, with pragmatism. Lee Kuan Yew was a dictator, same as a Mobutu, a Mugabe, a Siad Barre, an Amini. But look at what he achieved. That's what we're looking for. This is what he achieved. Look at Singapore. Compare that. Ian Douglas Smith and the white regime in Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, were dictators. But look at Salisbury. And now, look at what we have. Today, as we speak, this is what we have. This is what we have achieved. Why are we not ashamed by saying that? Compare that with all this and that. Singapore is tiny. This is what is Africa. All over Africa, this is a number of countries in Africa are like this. Current African leadership destroys hope. Meritocracy, finding the best talents the population has to offer and grooming them into leadership position, has failed in Africa. No country can survive in an inept government. Correct. Engineer Gustave Katif, a genius, is being denied opportunity to develop his industrial revolution drive. He has been harassed and arrested, jailed for a month because of his innovative and open-mindedness. This is what he has said. He has written books. He has gone all over to many universities. He has actually proposed that given an opportunity, he can build airport passenger bridges. He's an electronics engineer. He's also a communication engineer. He's also a chemical engineer. All combined in one. Combined harvesters. He can build that agro engineering. He can do that. Electronics is his specialty. Build lights. He was in Saudi Arabia doing all this stuff, which I'm showing here. Chemical and engineering, everything. He has worked in oil and gas. He has nailed it on the nail actually by saying that Africa lacks engineering leadership at presidential level and is congested with political scientists and lawyers and attorneys with no technological expertise to confront Africa's chief problem, the lack of technology. And no wonder why 50 years after independence, the African industrialization is not even a dream. He continued to say that it is time for Africa to unite and to be a union and to produce 100% products in many categories like semiconductors, automobiles, high-speed trains, airplanes and aviation equipment, aerospace and toys and games, oil and gas farm equipment, mining equipment, earth-moving equipment, people-moving equipment, software development, communication, information technology, power generation and transmission, lighting systems, industrial tools, many other audiovisuals. And he says he can do it. He has the blueprint. He has written the blueprint. He has gone to universities, to governments, to officials, to people, to individuals. And he knows that can create jobs. Here is his book. You can get it from Amazon, where he explains it. Although he was focused on Zimbabwe, he also broadens his industrial ideology all over Africa. Not even one politician has come up with such an idea. Not even one in Africa has come up with such thinking, but they deny him. Africa needs a dictator today. It needs a dictator yesterday. Lee Kuan Yew was also an excellent dictator. He was a man with a mission to transform a small seaside town into a financial giant. The size of the country's GDP per capita compared to its tiny size and the lack of resources is a testament to his success at doing so. That's what we want. That's the man we need. That's the woman we need. That's the dictator we need in Africa today. You read more about that here from this website. Africa, instead of xenophobic, zeal-driven presidents and leaders who never even participated in any war anywhere, who were sitting cozy in offices, and now they engineer xenophobia, tribalism, stealing from national resources. We need to first remove the European borders. We should introduce one currency for Africa, one language, one army, one passport, and they say no more trade with China, Europe, and United States for a period. We need a good dictator big time so that he can cause or she can cause us to drastically change our politics pronto and our thinking pronto. Otherwise, we are history. That's what we need. We need a dictator yesterday. A good dictator yesterday. We need African unity yesterday. We need to remove all the borders yesterday. One currency yesterday. This is Priest Rabbi Ellen Tumizulu of Community Hebrew Ethics. Subscribe to our channel where we propagate the real power and potential to recreate power to rulership and perfect time recapturing. That's what we need. Thank you, Salani Kahle. Till we meet, think about this. We need a dictator to save us.